What is up, everybody? I am so excited about this video because I am joined by my good friend Jeremiah Law. I'm actually so excited to be able to have this conversation with him and for you to be able to hear some of his thoughts and experiences and just some of his heart, because when I was going through my ethnic awakening, Jeremiah was one of those people that came alongside me and kind of talked through things and helped me through things, and so he's just been instrumental in my journey, and so I'm so excited for you to be able to hear from him. So Jeremiah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, man. It's good to hear your voice, Matt, and just very honored and blessed that you thought of me for this project, but glad we're still, connected after all these years from college till now, and excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. When we were first in college, we kind of got introduced through Dr. Hull. Shout out Dr. Hull, he's the best.
Shout out to Captain.
And yeah, Captain Hull. If you understand that reference, you understand it. If you don't worry about it. But I remember one day, I think he emailed me. He was like, "Hey, Matt," I think I was a junior at the time. He was like, "There's a freshman. His name is Jeremiah Law. Will you kind of reach out to him and check in on him? He's a youth ministry major." And so that's kind of how we got connected. And I kind of mentored you in the beginning of college, but then I think it's really cool how our relationship has changed from me kind of being a mentor to you mentoring me, like I said, about like Asian culture and things like that. But then also just as we're continuing on in our careers in ministry, like, we're just peers, and we're just brothers in Christ, connected from Iowa to Texas. And so it's so cool to continue to develop the relationship as well as see the relationship develop. And so I'm super excited
about
man. Today.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about some of this stuff, but I kind of want to just start off by asking you point blank, like, who are you? Who is Jeremiah Law? Like, what do you do? What do you like? All that kind of stuff, just so people can kind of get to know you.
So like Matt said, my name is Jeremiah, and I am a student pastor down in the great state of Texas in Houston. And I have been serving at the Foundry Church for almost 5 years now, and it's been a great time. And so if you know me, you know I love clothes, I love shoes, and more than just obviously the material side, but I just love that part of the creativity and that type of art. And then most people know me as a big foodie. I love to cook, and I just love culture and creating culture and curating culture, and I just think that there's so much creativity in this world to be noticed and to be digested and to be evaluated. And so I just love so many parts of pop culture, and
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to see all of those different interests and passions interwoven throughout our conversation today. And so thank you for sharing those things with us, Jeremiah. My first real digging down deep question is, we're talking about, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so ethnically, how do you identify, and can you kind of tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your experiences?
Yeah, so I would identify as an Asian American, a Chinese American, and Chinese as in ethnicity, but also Taiwanese as a kind of nationality, being that my mom grew up in Taiwan, but they were all basically Chinese people anyways. Lots of history around that. And then I would also categorize myself as kind of a second generation, 1.5 generation Asian American, meaning, my mom immigrated from Taiwan to America. My dad was born in America, but there are parts of my history that is not just from being raised in America, but my parents bring their history from other countries, and that has definitely affected the ways that I was raised and the values that we were taught, even from a really, really young age. And so I'm definitely grateful for a lot of that, and having kind of living in different perspectives, living in an American perspective, whether it's at school, but living in a more Asian perspective at home. And so while I was really blessed to, grow up in that Asian community, I also ended up moving to Kentucky. And so I've had this really kind of unique perspective of both living in an Asian community and being super proud of my heritage, to living in a bubble of sticking out as an Asian American. And so I've been really grateful to have lived in those two perspectives, and I think that's kind of made me a little more patient and a little more understanding of a lot of people's feelings, whether they grew up in one experience or another. So that's kind of my foundation as an Asian American, being raised in a couple different environments.
Thank you so much. My next question is, during your life, was there ever a time that you remember where you realized that you were Asian, or became aware of your Asian identity?
Yeah, so I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and my dad was a pastor at a pretty large Chinese church out there, and so I was kind of blessed and very lucky to have been made aware and been raised in an Asian American community from a very young age. And our youth group was a bunch of Asian youth who all loved the same thing, who all wanted to be like Yao Ming and play basketball, or play music. We all played piano or violin or something like that. And so I was very immersed into the Asian American culture, whether it was all the crazy food I had to eat since I was little, to just the movies we would watch and all those other things. And so from a very young age, I definitely kind of embraced and was very appreciative of my heritage.
Awesome. And speaking of your heritage, how are ways that you've been able to find that you've been able to connect to that heritage, as well as are there other pieces of your heritage that you want to experience more moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, there's, we make a lot of jokes about stereotypes, and I know that's not always the best side of being Asian American, but there are a lot of funny things growing up. Like, to this day, I still feel weird about wearing shoes in the house, because that was like, if you grew up in an Asian household, you knew when you entered a house you'd always take your shoes off. To even the funny moments of like eating dinner, my mom would make me eat every single grain of rice or every single part of my food on the plate, and she's like, if you leave 7 grains of rice on the plate, that's how many pimples your wife is gonna have when you grow up, or something like that. So like all of these like little traditions and all of these like tales were always something that kind of set my experience apart from my other friends. And I think in the future, I've experienced, I've been lucky to have experienced all the food, all the culture, all the values, and being raised. But I think in the future, I would love to, make more trips back to China, back to Singapore, where my parents live now, and just really see what it is like for people to grow up there and for people to really live there. And for a lot of other countries, it's not about like getting out of that country or making it to America, but they have their lives there and they've settled there. And so I really want to see the ways that they've rooted themselves in an Asian country, and I think there's a lot to learn and appreciate from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there customs and traditions that come to your mind that bring you the most joy?
Oh, for sure, lots of joy. Definitely food is one thing. Whether we're talking about like dim sum or Chinese New Year, like food and community and coming together and having potlucks, like we do that way better than American families, all right? It's not just burgers and hot dogs. Like we got like 25 dishes and like 18 desserts, and we're eating from like 5 p.m. to midnight, and it's just families and families and so many relationships and friendships that have been formed from those years. And there's still a lot of people that, even though I haven't seen them in like 15 years, I still remember all those times. And so I think that community and that value aspect has always been something that I am very proud of and means a lot to my culture.
Thank you so much about sharing those things that are part of your life that help you find connection and joy. I absolutely love hearing just from the different people what kind of comes to their mind. And so thank you so much for sharing that. My next question is kind of a harder one. Just in the past year, because of COVID and just a number of other things, we've seen a rise in attacks against Asian people, especially elderly, especially women. Back in, I believe it was March, there was the shooting in the Atlanta area where a majority of the victims were Asian women. And so we've just seen this rise in Asian hate as of late, and there's a number of reasons that contribute to that. But I was just wondering if you would be willing to share kind of how you're navigating and processing what's going on in America right now for the Asian population.
Yeah, the first thing that really breaks my heart about all this, immediately I think of just the vulnerable people in our community, whether it's the elderly or it's Asian women who have not even been treated right in our own communities. And so that's always the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm really glad like my grandma doesn't have to deal with all this. She lives in Taiwan, she doesn't live here. And so that first and foremost breaks my heart. And secondly, I think that it is really cool to see a lot of younger Asian American youth. I say younger as if I'm like that old, but even these teenagers and these really young Asian Americans, these third generation, fourth generation Asian Americans who are really finding their voice and beginning to understand and realize how to express their emotions, because for most of their lives those emotions have been suppressed, whether it was in the family or just because they felt very alone. But I think that it's cool to see, not cool, but it's interesting to see just the dynamics between the young people and the rest of society, and how these Asian American people are really rising up and just trying to get their voice heard. And so, like, personally for me, I've never experienced any, physical attacks or any racially targeted event. But I think, I didn't just grow up in Seattle, but I grew up I lived in Kentucky, I live in Texas now, and those are very different and new experiences of living as an Asian American. Obviously in Kentucky there's not a lot of Asians, so you definitely stick out. And even in Texas here, there's just so, Texas is so large, there's so many compartments of people that you end up having these bubbles. And so when you stick out, people struggle to understand you. They struggle to have the mental capacity to understand someone different from them. And so you don't always, I know that at some points I've been, not chosen because I was Asian, or I haven't been taken as seriously as someone else. Whether it's something as silly as playing sports, or if it's voicing my opinion, you definitely can tell sometimes they will just tend to choose, or they will tend to listen to someone that's more like them than someone like me who is a little different.
Well, I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable in those ways. My next question is, do you have, or what would you wish that non-Asian people knew about Asian people?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to communicate things to non-Asian people. I think the best ways to offer new perspectives, and so I think I have a couple perspectives to kind of explain. I think the first one from a human perspective, and this one is already pretty common because of all the other injustices and racial injustices that have happened. But I think that it is especially important for non-Asians to just be able to validate feelings and to listen. And I feel like we've had a lot of practice with that this past year and in 2020. But really that for a lot of Asians, they rarely get to express emotion. They rarely get to express feelings. And this is a great time just on a human level to validate emotion, validate feelings, whether you agree with it or not, just to be able to listen. And secondly, I think on more of a racial perspective, at least for my upbringing and my experience, for a lot of Asians, the biggest complaint or the biggest issue that they see is that Asian Americans are not given opportunities or the chance to prove themselves, right? They're known as the model minority who just stays quiet. And yes, we are successful, we make a lot of money in a lot of different fields of work, but when we want to be represented, when we want to be a part of society and contribute to culture, we are usually shoved into a corner. And so for many Asian Americans, for youth or people in many industries, we just want the chance to be given an opportunity to prove ourselves, and that's really it. Just an opportunity and a chance to prove ourselves to the rest of society and the rest of America. And I think that if you're in a place of leadership, whether you're a teacher or a coach or something else, to give those chances and to give those opportunities to Asian American youth or people in those fields. And so I think those two perspectives are really important.
Yeah. I feel like that's so profound to me, the way that you articulated that, because I'm adopted, and so I didn't have the same kind of Asian community, Asian perspectives that you have as you grew up and stuff like that. But in my life, I see exactly what you're talking about, but I don't think I would have attributed that to me being Asian necessarily. And so it's comforting to me to even know that there's other people who have that similar ideology or that similar experience, just so that I know that I'm not alone in my experiences or in the way that I've been treated in certain ways. And so even though that's not great, it's just kind of comforting and powerful to know that you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
And so even though that was like something that you wanted non-Asian people to know, as an Asian, I really appreciated knowing that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I found that super profound. And then my last question is, do you have a message that you would like to share to Asian people who might be watching this video?
Yeah, I think that's also really important. And I think, like we've said, there's been a lot of Asian American voices that are beginning to be elevated, and I see all these rallies happening across America, and just people finding their voice. And I think that is a crucial step in just being able to be represented and to stand up for your heritage and your ethnicity. But I think that before we continue, I think we expect that change is just gonna happen. And before we expect that change from other people, I really think, especially for Asians, that we really have to take a step and look inward on how we're going to unite and come together. Because if you think about Asia, there's so many countries, and Asia's this extremely large continent, and there's already a lot of disunity among us. Whether it's Southeast Asians versus Middle Eastern Asians, or Asians that grew up in the hood versus Asians who grew up in middle class, upper class neighborhoods. You have Asians on the East Coast and the South and the West Coast who all don't really get along, and you even have China and Japan and Korea, and no one really liked Japan during World War because Japan took over everyone. So there's all this inward rivalry already. And so I'm super happy to see people elevating their voice and raising their voice, but also we have to understand that if we really want change and we really want to take more steps forward, we have to not just solve our differences, but learn to understand the differences we already have as a community first, before we keep running into this larger sphere of society. And so I think that is something that we need to be patient on and take a step in listening to our own community. Secondly, as we kind of already seen, that even with the shooting in Atlanta, there's already been more events and different events that have happened that have affected Black people, that have affected Hispanic people, and we have to use this time and use these events to put people around us and put resources around us, so that we can be ready for, unfortunately there's going to be another event, and there's going to be something else that happens. And for every event that happens, for everything that happens in our culture, the more prepared we are for it, the more we listen and understand, the more ready we are to take action the next time it happens. And instead of being reactionary all the time, we're able to know exactly what to do, know who to care for, know who to listen to. And so I think, we have our moments of letting our voice be heard, but also, as a whole, as a community, as a diverse nation, and just group of people wherever we live, we need to be ready to be there for whoever is affected next, and not just run around and try to figure out what to do in the moment, but
Yeah.
to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good word.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences and your insight. Lastly, is there just anything else that you would like to share with the people watching this video, as well as if you would like to, you can go ahead and share ways that they can follow you on social media if they want to kind of continue to learn from you, as well as just kind of see what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot more to share. I feel like I'm always open to conversations and always willing to listen to questions and just have conversations. So even if it's not me, even if it's Matt or it's someone else with a different perspective, I think more often than not we are, you know, more than willing to listen. So you can follow me on Instagram at Mr. JLaw, and I'm on Facebook. I mean, most people who see me and see my Facebook know that I'm pretty active, so you know, I'm always down for conversations, and I always post hopefully good content. And that's really it. I don't have too much else off the top of my head.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jeremiah, for taking the time to have this conversation with me, but then also sharing this with everybody else. It really means a lot. And again, I just so value our friendship and just the ways in which you've been able to kind of help lead and guide me through my own identity as I've accepted my full self, which includes, and a large piece of that is my Asian identity. And so thank you so much for being you. I just really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Appreciate you too, and so it's so awesome to see all the content you're producing, and so can't wait to continue this conversation with so many other people.
Who knows? Maybe there will be another video of Matt and Jeremiah coming in the future. Who knows?
You know it's gonna happen.
But anyways, yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to watch this video. It really means a lot to us.
Peace.